Hi YouTube, this is Raven again. In my last video I talked about how I'm a survivor, not a victim, of a 16-year marriage to a covert narcissist. I wanted to take this video to go into the shock and awe campaign that he raged against me. In the last video I talked about how mistake number one was trusting the narc. And I didn't realize at the time that when a narcissist goes through a crisis in their life, they become number one. Their family's not number one, their children, their wife, whoever, they're out for number one. And I didn't realize that. I assumed he still had my best interest at heart and the children's best interest at heart. And that was a mistake that I'm not going to make again. If you hear a rooster crowing in the background, you're not hearing things. That is actually my pet rooster. When the children and I were forced to leave our home, we had no place to go, and my parents let us move into my grandmother's farmhouse. So I'm out in the country with cats and dogs and roosters and chickens and you name it, cows, horses, pigs. It's a whole menagerie. Anyways, the shock and awe campaign was where my husband attempted suicide, and I think it was a staged suicide attempt. I'll go into reasons why in later videos, but it was all meant as a manipulation tactic, and he knew that that resonated with me because I'm in the Army Reserves and I'm the suicide prevention NCO, non-commissioned officer. I have training in preventing suicide, and he even used a script from my training that I was not even aware of at the time because I was just in shock. But what had happened is that douchebag, that's what I call him now instead of my husband because it makes me feel better. My counselor told me to come up with a different name for him for my texts and emails because when I would see his name it would cause anxiety. So, and she suggested, well, how about the children's father or father of my children? And I said, no, I like douchebag. But I'll call him DB for short. We have a lot of acronyms in the military, so I'll use DB. Anyways, DB and I went to marriage counseling. Now, never go to marriage counseling with a narc because it makes them worse because they now have an audience. They have a captive audience where the therapist is going to listen to everything they have to say, and narcissists love being the center of attention. Well, we went to marriage counseling, and he told the counselor, we don't communicate. And he was saying that everything in the marriage was my fault. Well, what he meant by that was that, he doesn't communicate because narcissists like to project their own traits onto their victims. And at the time, I was writing a novel. I'm a writer. I'm also an artist, as you can see in the background. And I would edit my novel at night for about a couple hours, and he was jealous of anything that took my time, whether it was taking care of the children, my full-time job, or, editing my novel. And even to tell me that we had a counseling session, he sent me a Google Calendar reminder. He didn't even say, Raven, we have a counseling session. I've scheduled counseling because our marriage is in trouble. No, he sent me a Google Calendar reminder. And it's while he's sitting on one end of the couch and I'm sitting on the other end of the couch editing my novel. So he blamed me for everything in the marriage. Well, the counselor, to her credit, I think she saw through this. And she said that, you have a lot of issues from your childhood, especially with pertaining to women, that you've built up this idea of your wife that isn't who your wife is, and you're reacting and interacting with her instead of the actual Raven. So she suggested that he go through therapy without me for a while. And this made him worse. She put him on antidepressants, and I think that really made him crazy. Because after about 2 weeks of being on antidepressants, we got into an argument one night. And you always get into arguments with narcs that are about nothing. I mean, it might be, did you take out the trash? And like, how dare you attack me and nag me? I'll take out the trash when I get, good and ready to. It's always about something that's not worth arguing about. But on this night, he got violent. And he ripped the mattress off the bed with me in it. And he jumped on the mattress and he starts pounding the mattress as hard as he can, screaming at the top of his lungs, you don't understand me, you don't understand my pain, and you never listen to me unless I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. And of course, this scared the living daylights out of me. And I'm like, what do I do? So I said very quietly, I'm going to go get the children. I'm going to take them to my mom's house. Well, he snapped at this point, and he jumps off the bed, says, "If you're going to leave me, then I'm going to kill myself." And he went into our closet. He got a sawed-off shotgun, loaded it, and put it in his mouth. Now, being the suicide prevention NCO, I know that sometimes when men or women are suicidal, especially parents, sometimes they'll take out their wife and their children with them. And I had this moment where I was scared, like, what do I do? Is he going to turn the gun on me and the children? So I thought about, going in and grabbing the children and running out the door and calling 911. But instead, I think my training kind of worked against me, and I decided to go in and talk him out of it. And I did. I talked him out of it. He handed me the loaded gun, and he said, "I'm going to bed now." And so he went to his home office that we had on the same floor and shut the door and went to sleep. Well, I'm standing there holding this loaded weapon like, oh my God, my husband just put a gun in his mouth and tried to kill himself. And so I unload the weapon, and I lay awake for several hours, scared, not knowing what to do. And so I finally go into his office. I shake him really hard to wake him up because he wouldn't wake up. And I yank the pillow out from under his head, and I say, "You need to go to the emergency room. You tried to kill yourself." And he gets very mad, like, "Oh, can't believe you want me to go to the emergency room in the middle of the night. I need a good night's sleep." And so he went back to sleep. So I don't know what to do at this point. I go downstairs and I get on Facebook because I'm looking for anybody to talk to, any of my friends. Of course, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, so nobody's awake. I wait about an hour. I go back upstairs and I say, "Look, if you don't go to the emergency room, I'm calling 911. And I think that this snapped something in him. He immediately went and packed a toiletries bag and an overnight bag, which is very strange. When you go to the emergency room, you don't take an overnight bag. You go because it's an emergency. You want to get there as soon as possible. But he went to the emergency room, and I waited an hour because I wanted to let my mother sleep. I didn't want to wake her up yet. And so I called her, and I said, "My husband tried to kill himself. I need you to come watch the children so I can go to the emergency room." So, of course, she rushed over there, and she says to me, "I've always known you were depressed and you were unhappy, but I didn't know why until now." And I kind of let that sit. I went to the emergency room, and he's asleep. He's sleeping there in the emergency room. And I wake him up, and he turns to me, and he gives me this demon look to his face. I can't even do it. But he always had this look of death, this stare of death on his face, especially when he was mad. And at this point, he looks at me, he says, "Our marriage is killing me. You're killing me." And he said it just like that. And I got mad at this point because, he's blaming me again for everything that's wrong in the marriage, just like he'd done in counseling. And so out of anger, I said, "You know what? If our marriage is killing you, then I'm going to take myself out of the equation. Goodbye, good luck." And I left the emergency room mad. Well, I had several hours to think about it, and I was like, I really don't want to put my children through a divorce. I don't want to do that. So I visited him in the loony bin, as he called it, and I said, "Look, I don't want out of the marriage. What I want is for you to get counseling. I want you to go live with your sister for a while because I'm scared of you. I don't want to, I'm afraid to let you come home." Well, that caused apparently a huge narcissistic injury in his mind, that how dare you reject me? How dare you not want to be married to me anymore? So from then on, everything that I did for the next week would be used against me later in court. And I'll go into that about things that you should do and shouldn't do when divorcing a narcissist. But from then on, he started a smear campaign that I was the bitch that drove him to suicide, and that's still the narrative that he has now. He's always the victim. But mistake number one is that I trusted him. I assumed that this was the person that loved me, that I loved him, and that he had the best interest of me and the children at heart, and that's not true. Never trust a narc. When they go through a crisis, they are number one. Goodbye for now. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.